Jack Wildt.
Jack Wildt and my wife June.
Hello.
Hi, June.
And Trail.
I have a ton of questions. and maybe taking these in order. Working inside a mine, we talked a little bit about this yesterday, but you know, working in the mine itself, it's a little tight in there. It's dark and damp, and there's problems in circulation and air, and sometimes there's a sequence of work you were telling me about.
Right.
Right. So
you would muck out what you shot the night before.
You blew up
you blew out the faces, the drift or shaft or whatever, and you clean that all out, and then you re-drill and you shoot it before you leave there at night.
Okay.
And then, because that way all the smoke will be cleared out by the time you get back the next morning. That's the only way to do it. Unless you know, if you're a bigger mine, well, you use they run pipes in and big blowers and blow air in.
You know, I think everybody in the world has tried their hand at panning gold, but finding gold in the gold is where you find it.
Well, yeah, but it's got to be. You got to look for certain indications of where it's at. I mean, you just don't go out here in the formation someplace unless you find a quartz vein. You know,
right.
Not all quartz veins have got gold in them. Not all of them got gold in them. You got the mother lode vein. It's the main vein that goes through from Mariposa County northward, and it's a big vein. In places it's 25 feet wide.
Right.
And other places 4 feet wide.
Well, White Rock.
Well, that is above. Who knows where that came from? I don't think that's on the mother lode vein. That's south of the mother lode vein.
Okay.
But that's just a big blub of pure silica. 98% silica.
Really?
Yeah.
Nobody's harvested it.
Oh yes, it is. That used to stick up to where you could see it off of 140.
Really?
And it was all taken out. And silica is used in foundries. That's what they make the molds out of.
Okay.
For pouring iron.
Okay.
That's what silica is used for.
Huh.
You know, and it's got to be pure. It's got to be pretty close to pure. So, but the mother lode vein, then you got the north belt or the east belt, which is in the hanging wall of the mother lode vein. And
hanging wall is the underside?
The hanging wall is on top, on the top side.
Okay.
The mother lode vein runs northwest to southeast.
Okay.
And through the two dips in this country here is 72 degrees to the east.
Consistently.
But once in a while you find one that some of these other little spur veins is either pretty vertical or they may even dip to the west, which is not right, but that's the way they are. But eventually they'll go down. It's like this one here. This is putting straight up and down.
We're
right here.
We're talking about.
It dips to the west.
We're sitting on top of a mine claim right now.
Right.
And that's an Ellicott.
And it was packed because this is all surrounded by Fremont land grant. But this 20 acres is patented.
Really?
And originally it was called the dry creek lode.
Okay.
This 20 acres here and that 1 acre that lilies live on over there was part of this at one time.
Okay.
That was a cabin site because there's a spring over there.
Huh.
Run all the time. And but this is pretty vertical vein, but as you get deeper, it gets steeper. It'll turn over and go back to the east.
So, how many years have you worked this mine?
I've never worked this one.
You never worked this one?
My father-in-law did.
Father-in-law.
The only thing that I ever done, him and I used to come out here when Bill Harmon owned it.
Okay.
And when they opened up and built the shed frame and everything out here on his 5-stand mill, her dad and I used to come out here and we'd have to come out and clean it up for him. He wouldn't let the guys he had to hire here touch it.
Because of the ore.
We had to.
You call that high grading, right?
That's a good possibility. That's what would have happened.
High grading means that they're stealing.
In other words, you steal it.
Did you work in the mine, Jim?
Oh, she's worked underground.
Really?
Yeah.
What was your job?
She ran hoist for me. She ran hoist for me.
Really?
Oh yeah, a couple times.
Oh, yeah. My dad, of course, my dad was also a miner, and I helped
She was
him.
underground with her dad.
So you were down in these mines with the big boys.
Oh, you bet. I climbed ladders and everything.
Huh.
I've been in tunnels, and I've always enjoyed it and liked it. I love to be in a tunnel, go in a tunnel.
Exploring?
You just looking around, looking around and seeing it. I just enjoy being in one. Most people, ladies, are scared to death of anything like that.
Well, there's bats
But I
in there.
grew up with it, so it don't bother me.
Yeah, there's bats and there's wild things that hang out in those mines, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you just gotta watch out for them.
Bats is the worst, and you never know about a bat. And
Yeah.
they're flying over your head, and they don't tell you about that when you go into some of the caves.
Yeah.
If you'd happen to have a skin spot on the back of your hand or on your face, or they're flying over your head and you had a little droplet hit that, and the bat happened to have rabies, you could end up with rabies.
Huh. And the mining doesn't scare them off?
No. You shoot during the day and they'll go right back in there at night.
Really? All right. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I would like to get into the history a little bit, but you know, we have an active mine in Mariposa.
Yes.
The Fremont Mine, they're exploring.
It's not really active, it's exploration work.
That's the Josephine and the Pine Tree.
Well, Josephine and Pine Tree, it's all the same property.
Yeah. There's a big debate about open pit mining versus traditional mining in tunnels. And it has something to do with geology. And in your experience, there were no open pit mines in Mariposa up until recent days, and I think the only one that the one over in Jamestown is the only open pit mine they've had for gold mining in this country, right?
Well, there's been some open pit way back when they used to ground sluice.
Okay.
There's a couple of them here in this county.
Really?
Over where John Emmett has been working over there for years, it was open pit to start with. That's a big cut. And it was all washed out by the placer mine years ago. And the same way at the Schroeder mine. The Schroeder mine was that way too. And eventually they went underground. I don't really believe the geologists can say what they want, but I don't believe that this country here will support an open pit mining operation to start with. Most of your values here is in veins. It is like you get into Nevada and Utah, where there's a little bit over a large area. This country here, the values are all in the veins. And you take a 4-foot vein, for instance, and you either got to strip off millions of tons of material to get at it, or you run a tunnel in and stope it all out. You know, I think that's where they're all wrong here. I don't think they should even consider open pit.
It's just not cost effective.
It's not cost effective.
I've seen the hole they dug up in Jamestown, and that's a huge canyon back there.
Oh, that ain't nothing. You had to go to some other states.
Well, it couldn't have been all that profitable because they didn't keep mining.
See, the Pine Tree Mine, the Pine Tree here, was Bradley, Phil Bradley and his brother owned 51% of the Pacific Mining Company and AJ Land Company. And they owned this one here in Bunker Hill, Sullivan, the Harvard Mine, Jamestown, and Alaska Juneau. And they also had some holdings down in Old Mexico. Mm-hmm. And we took I helped pull all the machinery out of the Pine Tree Mine.
Oh, really?
The hoist out from underground. And that's all we pulled out from underground. It's all that was left under there. But everything else we took out, except the mill. We left the mill was there. It was a 180-ton Hardy Chronicle ball mill, and the jockey got in there and cut it up. But we hauled everything to the Harvard Mine. And the Harvard Mine is like this one here. It's on the Mother Lode Vein. And why would you move all that rock that's basically no good? Look at the waste pile over there they took out. They didn't mill that. You know, and as far as I'm concerned, there's a good shaft there. They could have went ahead off in that shaft, went in and retimbered it or whatever it took to make it safe again.
Yeah.
And worked off in that, and they'd have still been running as far as I'm concerned.
Well, the thing that's always puzzled me, these mines were producing at around $27 an ounce.
I think it was around 18 to start with.
Well, when they first started, when they were mining here in the 1850s, but 27 or something like that is the price of gold in the 40s. And these mines all went broke. Now the price of gold is $1,200 an ounce.
True.
And why haven't they opened up some of these mines and put them back in? Because they were producing gold when they were shut down. They just weren't economical.
The biggest trouble is, I think, today, is all the money you got to have up front, and the years you got to spend trying to get permits to do any mining.
Yeah.
The permits you got to have for explosives, and what you got to have to store it, you know, and the license you got to have to use explosives anymore is, you know, it's not like it used to be. We used to go over there at Bill Trevocas right downtown Mariposa, and he'd have the captain fuse would be down there, where it's right below
The pizza factory.
And
Yeah.
we go up on the hill where the water storage tanks are now, and they had a powder house up there. We go up there and get, or he'd run up there and get it, you know, bring us down a box of powder. We'd put them both in the car and go home. That's the big trouble. You got to have lots of money to start with.
Yeah.
Look at how much they spent out at the Pine Tree Mine.
They spent tens of millions of dollars doing exploration work out
They
there.
spent, what, the first bunch that was in there spent between $10 and $12 million. And this outfit has spent at least $10 million.
So in the exploratory work, you know, they try to find the gold so they can put together a plan. But you know, drilling gives you some kind of indication of where that gold ore is. But it seems to me that it's very specific. There's very small deposits of gold in large, very huge quartz structures. Not all of the mother lode vein has gold in it.
That's true. There's places where the ore chutes is fairly close together, and they're not straight up and down. They always dip to the southeast on the average. Once in a while you find them goes the other way, but you get some of these old mines. If you ever run into any of the old maps, and you look at the old maps and see which way the area that they've stoped out, they all rake off to the southeast. They don't go straight up and down. Once in a while you'll find one that's pretty straight up and down. Now this one here, there's a section in here that's pretty straight up and down.
And
then trying to mill something in this state is prohibitive.
so you don't see gold mining in the future of Mariposa County.
I do not. Not unless they want to, they'd have to ship everything out. I mean, concentrated here, and there's no reason why you can't concentrate it here.
Right.
You could put a mill in.
Well, that's what they were going to do at the Pine Tree, is concentrate it, then they were going to ship it to Nevada and have it.
That's the only place you can do it. And not all, well, I don't know how many places in Nevada now. There used to be a good smelter over there right alongside the Interstate 80 in Sparks.
Yeah, I saw
right
it.
alongside the highway.
I saw
And
it.
you would never know it was there. If you were just driving through, you would never recognize it.
Well, I had somebody point it out to me. We were going back to Bonneville.
Your house,
That mine.
there's still gold everywhere in this country.
Well, it's kind of dangerous for a.
Not really.
Not really.
Not really.
You know, you hear about mine cavings, and
I don't think they ever, when it comes to actually caving in, I don't think this country here killed a whole lot of people by cave-ins.
yeah,
Anytime that somebody died underground in this country, I think it was lack of air, not the gas. There's no gas in this country, but it's lack of oxygen.
okay,
You can have a vertical shaft in this country here, an old well, for instance, and if it's 40 feet deep, you better be careful you go at the bottom, because you're liable to end up with no oxygen. You don't have any air circulation, you don't have any oxygen. And as soon as you get down a little ways, you'll find out, because you'll start getting a little bit low on wind.
Yeah.
You will.
So some of these mines, I look on the old mining report, they go down 1,000, 1,200 feet.
The Pine Tree Mine is, if you go clear from the surface, you go back the tunnel from the old, where the mill was down there, there's 940 feet back to the shaft. It's got a double compartment shaft that goes down 1,360 feet from that level. Now, the Mount Gaines is 1,500.
Really?
But it's, you know, it's pretty flat. The Mount Gaines is pretty flat. The Pine Tree is average 72 degrees.
And your mine here, the
It's 200.
It's 200?
200. Probably the Pine Tree is probably the deepest around if you went clear from the surface.
Okay, but it's got some tunnels drilled into the side of the hill.
But the old Virginia mine, you know, over that wasn't all that deep. The other one on the other side. The Mount Over is just, there's no shaft at the Mount Over.
There's no shaft?
Not, well, I shouldn't say that. There is a couple places, there's some shallow shafts on the Mount Over property. But Princeton it's all part of the same system. vein system.
Okay.
But the Mount Over is, that dates back a long ways because they had a steam powered mill there.
Yeah.
And that's where the name Mint come from.
Right.
They talk about Mount Over Mint. According to Bertha Schroeder, because she dug up all the information on it one time, and I don't know where it got to, how Mount Over ended up with it called a Mint. The steam engine that they run the mill off from was come off in a barge that run up and down the Sacramento River that was called the Mint.
Huh.
And she dug that up, but I don't know what happened to that information. Now, whether it got up to Lake Tahoe with her and got lost up there. If I see the daughter, I'll ask her about it one of these days.
She come back to town once in a while?
Once in a while she does. I think they still own that house in town.
I talked to Bertha before she passed.
Oh, did you?
And she was
quite a historian.
Quite
and everything had to be just right.
Yes.
The biggest trouble is back in those days, they didn't have any pumps. They used rod line pumps. It's a big piston, and you got to keep it down close to the bottom.
Right.
And all your power mechanisms on top, and that big rod line's going back and forth. And the deeper you go, you got to keep moving it down. Not like the pumps we got today that's electric. You know, they didn't have any electricity back the other day.
Right.
And that was a problem. And they didn't pump very much. They had steam pumps or air pumps. They run off steam.
Right.
My dad had one that was like a 3-inch. But in fact, it's still over there in the old Milburn mine in Whitlock. The last guys that worked there, they took it over there and it ended up at the bottom of the shaft yet. But most of these mines never made a whole lot of water. Like the Pine Tree mine. Took 4.5 years for it to fill up.
Right.
After they shut down.
Huh.
You know, didn't make much water. Never made enough water to run mill. That's the reason they had, in fact, they got a water right on that river down there, and they pumped it up. There's a 4-inch line that runs all the way from the river up there, and they had 3 big tanks up there right alongside the highway. That water was pumped up to there, and that's what they run the mill off from.
The Princeton Mine. That was the highest producing mine in the county from the standpoint of gold. But it had kind of an interesting history. It seems as though it wasn't all that rich, but it had a lot of money poured into it, so that
They run an awful lot of material. That's pretty deep. It's 1,400. It's 1,400.
yeah.
The old original shaft. The later shaft is not. But there's a lot of drifts off from it. And I can't remember how many stamps there was there. There was 20, 25, 30 stamps. Maybe 40, I don't remember it now. I haven't went back in there for so long, but when I was a kid, we used to go over there, walk over the hill, and all the iron work was laying there on the ground yet after it burnt.
It's still there. You can walk out there. Before the fire, it was hard to get back there, but now it's pretty accessible, and you can see all the old workings. But you were telling me about a mine on the other side of the road.
That's the newer one.
Down by the school? Below the school?
Below the church.
Church, good.
Yeah. That's a later one. Her dad worked there.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather worked in the old one.
What did your dad do, your granddad?
He did everything.
Yeah, he was a jack of all trades.
He run
He
Now
did whatever
that
come
mill,
along.
that working there, they had a steam hoist. And if you ever been around steam, it's fast. And there's very few people who can run a steam hoist.
Really?
There's probably nobody that. But they exhaust about twice, and you'd be out 200 feet. They were really fast.
Huh.
And that's what he did there. And they also run that stamp mill. There was a 10 stamp mill there. That was to do with. And they junked it all out during the Second World War.
Right.
Yeah.
They went around all through this country here and picked up a lot of the old stamp mills and took them for the war effort, the federal marshal.
Sent them to Japan in the form of bonds?
Well, the war was going on when, they sent them over there as bombs.
Yeah,
The
Dad.
4 stamp mill that belonged to her dad, well, it belonged to her grandfather before that. There was 2 4 stamps side by side. There was 8 stamps total, run with an overshot water wheel. And that 4 stamp, one of the 4 stamps, her dad moved around all over this country from one mine. Wherever he worked, he took a 4 stamp with him. And when he get done, he'd take it back home and lay it on the ground. When the war broke out and they went down, because he was a gantry crane operator, when he went down there and he come back and his 4 stamp mill was gone. They didn't know about the other 4 stamp that was all covered up in a blackberry patch. That's the 4 that we have.
Huh.
And it was brought here to this county in 1866, as far as I can find out.
And where is your stamp mill?
It's down at our old place.
At the old place?
Yeah, see, this place here actually belongs to our son Ralph. And the old place where Ralph is at down there, that was our place.
Really?
Well, I bought that down there, and we're getting up here. There's no reason for us to own anything.
You're a
This
young
belonged
man.
to a piece of this property belonged to a friend of mine, and he decided he wanted to sell it. So I talked to Ralph, and I said, "Why don't you buy it?" So we made a deal on it, and he bought it. I said, "Oh, we need a place to live the rest of our life. What do we need anything else for? We're comfortable here. We got a living room, and we're,
Place for the dogs?
You bet. She's right in here with us all the time.
Except for now. Yeah,
Yep, she's outside.
I hear her now and then.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, that 4 stamp, that was at the Malone Mine.
Malone, right.
That's right at Triangle, where Triangle Road takes off in the 140. That's a Malone Mine right there.
There was a gold mine in there?
You bet.
Huh.
There's still some good rock there.
Really?
But trying to get it is another thing.
For water, there's so much water
There's
there.
so much water in there.
Mm.
And, it's like every place else. It costs you a fortune to ever get permits for it, if you'd ever get them.
Yeah.
They dug a ditch all the way from there to Snow Creek. The old Malone ditch. I don't know who gathered up all the records on it, but somewhere I have a letter where there's a record of that Malone ditch. It comes all the way from Snow Creek, above the bridge going to Jerseyville, above the Triangle Bridge. It goes from there, comes all the way around.
Around Buckingham Mountain? And
Yes, it does.
huh. And that would be going around the Carter Ranch?
Oh yes, yep.
Mm-hmm.
I
If I remember right, took 2.5 years for them to dig that ditch.
There's a lot of ditches around our county, and particularly after a fire, and sometimes in the spring you can spot them really easy.
Yeah.
They were telling me, I forget who the storyteller was, think it was Scott Pinkerton. He was telling me that the Chinese would lay those ditches out and find the angle by having kind of a long cradle with water in it, and they used that water level to find the grade. They didn't have surveying instruments.
I don't know.
You never heard of that?
I don't know about that.
Well,
But if you start digging a ditch and you just let the water follow you around,
yeah,
you can pretty well tell when you get enough grade on it so that the water will flow.
okay.
Over where I was raised over there, the 3 ditches comes out of Saxon Creek. Comes in there where John Emmett's working.
Yeah,
There's a big one up high. There's one down lower, and then there's one down lower than that. There's 3 ditches goes around there.
okay.
And they had self-tripping at the top end of the ditch. They made a big reservoir, and they used a self-tripping gate on them. Whenever they were hinged in the center, and they had a spring on them to bring them back up. But once they got full, and the pressure, just so much pressure on top, shove this down, and it would open that whole thing up, and down it would come.
Yeah.
And the creek going by our house would run a big stream of water back in those days. Especially when they tripped that, and it's a pretty good sized reservoir up there.
Okay.
It dumped the whole thing, you know.
Huh.
And it was the self tripper on that big one was about 6 feet square.